Care said खाना मिल जाएगा.
कह रहे ये मुझे आने नहीं दे रहे अंदर. He says there is this movie and all, Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper.
So you're a celebrity, my friend.
अपन को अलीबाग से आएला मत समझ. One of them was Neapolitan blamage. कह रहे अरे यू क्या बना रहा तू नपातुल्ला ब्लैंक मैंगो. किस्मत ही ऐसी है. कुछ दिन सक्सेस आई उसके बाद फिर ये फाइनल रिकंस्ट्रक्टिव सर्जरी पंगा हैपेंड. आई वांट टू ब्रेक फ्री. खिलौना देखा है जो नीचे उसका सेंटर ऑफ ग्रेविटी हाई होता है. यू पंच इट फॉल्स अगेन स्टैंड्स अप.
And that is your story, a true great story. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on which part of the world you're in. Well wishers, it's such a pleasure to welcome my very dear friend Sanjay Shende, or whom I affectionately call as Shendu Chacha. Sanjay, you are a unique person, a true great story. You are not only an accomplished chef, you are also a person who has acted in movies. You're a calligrapher. You've also done bits and pieces in terms of play acting and vegetable carving and a whole host of so many things in the kitchen. You're a storyteller. You have also now started working as a member of the Irish representation in Belgium at the European Parliament in the capacity of a data scientist. Unbelievable, man. What a journey. You are a quantitative analyst working for the Irish government, representing them at the European Parliament. The journey from where you started to where you have come today is what I call as a true great journey. But before I dive in, let me welcome you, and why don't you say a few words about who you are and what's your journey been and how have we met? It'll be a pleasure to have you on.
I'm Sanjay Shende, as you introduced me rightly, and very ordinary person. Grew partially in Kolkata and then in Ghaziabad, and did my higher education in Delhi. Then moved to Ireland many years ago. Forgotten the count. Somewhere around 96, 97, and basically have been a chef for the first part of my career, and then later, forced by circumstances, I shifted gear and went into IT, computer, that kind of area.
Sanjay, what a pleasure. I mean, you've been very humble in doing your own introduction, but I want to start our journey before even we met. You, as you rightly said, you are, if we go back to the Indian subcontinent, you're from Maharashtra. You're a Marathi. Your family belongs to the Nashik area. But how did Calcutta happen and how did Ghaziabad happen? And what was those early days like? What's the family situation?
Oh no, actually, I would myself categorize or characterize myself more as a Delhiite, because my grandfather, he had a railway job, and we are ancestrally speaking from Alibag. अपन को अलीबाग से आएला मत समझ.
Yes,
So,
good old
so
Alibag in
good old
Maharashtra, where the
Alibag.
the mangoes are very
But
good over there.
my granddad had a job in the railways, so my entire father's side was in Old Delhi, Lahori Gate area, and also sometime around the mutiny, a lot of Maharashtriya Maratha, they moved northwards towards Gwalior, Kanpur, all the way. So my Nanihal, maternal grandparent side, they were from Kanpur, and they eventually ended up in Delhi. So both my parents are born and raised in Delhi.
It's
Correct,
an
correct.
amazing story. It's an amazing story there. But Calcutta, how did Calcutta happen? Because you speak Bengali like me, and
Yes,
where's
yes,
that
yes.
connection?
My father then cleared the UPSC and got a job in Kolkata. That's how he ended up in Kolkata. But then for my elder chacha's wedding, he was in Delhi to attend the wedding, which is where my mom was also there, because they were all from the old Delhi Marathi community. So my mom was attending the wedding, and सबने बोला यार विजय की भी देख लो लड़की. तो my mother was shown to him. उसने कहा ठीक है कर लेते हैं. Then that's
Very
how
nice.
they used to get married those days. So they got married, and immediately after marriage, my parents both moved to Kolkata. My father was already living in Kolkata, but then My father rented a bigger house to get my mom. But I was born in Delhi because पहला बच्चा जो होता है ननिहाल में होता है, तो मेरे बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट पे वो 1730 नई बस्ती नया बाजार वाला एड्रेस ही है,
The old Delhi address is
ओल्ड
there.
दिल्ली एड्रेस.
Fantastic. See, you and I connect at so many levels because Kolkata, you were in South Point. I used to go to Xavier's. We were around at the same time. There's
Yeah,
some
yeah,
very common
yeah, yeah,
connections
yeah.
from there. But I'm going to quickly move on to life where we kind of met into each other. Till then, you were just another regular guy, growing up in India with no idea of things like Escoffier, Larousse, others, Potage, Poisson, and you came in
Absolutely.
into so tell me about that journey of moving from being this ordinary guy with extraordinary skills, getting into learning all these. First, tell us your experiences with all these words because I've seen you play around with those words in our time together.
Well, you see, Rajat, my early part of the education was in a thorough English medium school, as you know, South Point, one of the premier, you could call it the Ivy League of schools in Kolkata. From there, when my father got transferred to Ghaziabad, he got a posting, and because it was closer to Delhi, he immediately took the opportunity. But we came in kind of a mid session situation. And my first term results from my Kolkata school were miserable. I was a notorious child, somebody who was well known in the teacher staff room as the troublemaker. Coming to Ghaziabad with that mark sheet, obviously none of the English medium schools was going to have anything to do with me. So eventually ended up in a Hindi medium school there. That actually gave me a lifetime advantage. What I realized is I have a huge acumen for picking languages. I can make the mental connect and I pick up languages very quickly,
Yeah.
except French, which I was never too good at. So Ghaziabad happened, and by the time, and the Kolkata school, the way it goes, the academic session, there is nursery, KG, prep, transition. 4-5 साल तो ऐसे ही खा जाते हैं वो लोग. तो I was quite late finishing my high school and 10+2. तब तक करियर की अर्जेंसी पड़ गई थी कि getting nowhere, and already kind of everybody else has kind of 3-4 shots at IITs and all that, and I was kind of almost like on my penultimate chances. तो मेरा गवर्नमेंट पॉलिटेक्निक में इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स आई गॉट selected for electronics. That is when my mind kind of started blanking out. I mean, I just felt that it wasn't for me. As fate would have it, I just decided not to take my first year exams. Instead, apply for hotel management, something completely out of the blue. I was actually kind of also considering options like uh, clerical exam के लिए बैठ जाऊं. Father से कहता था. He used to say, at least son, we have given you the opportunity that we didn't have, yeah, and I expect you to do at least get a better start than I had. So think of a better career. So I said, fine then, hotel management
So
it is.
you landed up completely Hindi medium background from Ghaziabad. You obviously, I know you very well, and I know you are today a data scientist. You are a quantitative analyst. So there was never anything lacking in terms of brain power. It was more of the application power, as we may call it, for most
Hmm.
of us at that point in time. And there you land up in hotel management. You were two batches my senior,
Yes.
technically before we became batchmates in a management training program. But tell me what happened when you arrived in this hotel management institution, which is a far cry from what you do now. But imagine you walk in and you hear all those terms and terminologies, and I know you've had some fun with attending classes and even getting a hang of those words. Some of them are very much French. Tell us a few interesting stories there.
Very quickly, I would like to say that when my dad gave me the bus money to go and sit the IHM exam, I was kind of in half a mind to just say कि I'll land up in Delhi, रीगल में कोई मूवी शूवी देख के आ जाऊंगा. And in that bus journey, something happened which is called the manthan, and I felt very guilty. I just my dad's face kept coming in front of me, and I said he put so much trust in me and this and that, and this is what I'm planning to do. So I went and sat the exam anyway. And as luck would have it, in the National Council, when I checked, my All India rank was something like fifth in that entrance. So it was a good start, even though in the interview I did very well. But I wasn't dressed up like I was seeing all very guys with ties and black shoes and all. I was in a Nostar Juta, regular check shirt, and I gave myself no chance, But then uh, my interview did actually go pretty well. So that was a good launch pad. But coming to IHM, initially, my friend circle in Ghaziabad and their parents and all, conventional type of people, when we were told to buy knives and whisks and this and that, so I showed them with a great pride. I said, ये सब है हमारा प्रैक्टिकल होते हैं. They said, अरे तू क्या बन रहा बावर्ची बन रहा के. I showed, they saw my journal, sponge cake, this, that. One of them was Neapolitan blamage. तो कह रहे अरे यू क्या बना रहा तू नपातुला ब्लैंक मैंगो. नपातुला ब्लैंक मैंगो. So, uh, I mean, I was myself not acquainted with the concept that there is something called a dry wine, which is described in terms of alcohol percentage. I used to think dry wine is something like dry milk, like milk powder. So wine ka powder hota hoga. So somebody was teaching us the green turtle soup, and he was saying you take dry wine in a ladle, heat it up on a flame, and pour it. And I was thinking that just before that, I'd seen the caramel making in the bakery class, and they take the sugar and burn it like that, so it starts melting and becomes caramelized. I said, if you put dry wine on a ladle and move it on a flame, would it not get charred? And the teacher gave me such a queer look. What are you on about, man? What बोल क्या रहा है ये आदमी? So I mean, horsed you over and all that. वो तो मजाक था, but uh, that is where I realized that this is a going to be a very uphill climb for me. I mean, it's all the posh people, relatively posh people. My father, simple government servant, सादा मतलब रूटीन. सुबह काम पे जाओ, शाम को आओ, घर का खाना. Never tried my hands at cooking, but I started taking my notes and all. Soon enough, my notes were kind of much in demand. Like पूसा गेट पे जो जेरोक्स की दुकानें थी, मेरे नोट्स की बड़ी फोटोकॉपियाँ चली हैं in my
Very true.
batch.
I
Yes,
just for the sake of the conversation, I'll cut it short to say you joined a prestigious institution, but this is where your true grit story comes in, Sanjay. As you were in the program, you had an extremely bad accident
yes,
which compromised you terribly.
yes,
I, in fact, shudder to talk about that accident myself. But would you like to describe what happened and how did your life change and what happened after that?
yeah. Well, as a over Katie, I was in my La Rochelle cycle. La Rochelle was their French restaurant, and I was in an evening shift. Part hotel, part Obra Maidens training, theoretical training. So from La Rochelle, I was traveling back to Ghaziabad because just the day before that, I had acquired a new rented place in Lajpat Nagar in Delhi. So I needed to get my luggage, and the next day was kind of a late start. So I said, I'll go home tonight to Ghaziabad, get my luggage, and at least start sleeping in the new place so that the commute is cut short. Little did I know that the 3 4 days that I hadn't been to Ghaziabad, they were constructing a new colony, ironically named Sanjay Nagar, and the hoarding was left right across the road from the divider to the nala, across it. And when I turned my scooter, it just banged, and I tossed, and my foot was on the girder, and the scooter fell on the back of my heel. जैसे गन्ने को घुटने पे रख के तोड़ देते हैं ना, something like that, a lever effect just snapped my femur, and the next thing I knew was my foot was on my shoulder. And that is a road, Rajat, where I have seen अभी दोपहर में Sunday afternoon you finish your lunch and dad asks you to जाओ पान लेके आओ. Going to get a pan, the road is clear. Coming back, there's a dead body shot at point blank. That is the place where the Ghaziabad mafia abandons murdered people and all. So on that road, I'm screaming. There was a advanced level telecommunication training colony next to it, right beside. Everybody heard my screams for about an hour. Nobody turned up, and I was bleeding and facing death. Like I said, I'm going to die tonight. Then suddenly, from across the road, a khokawala, who had a little shop, he and another guy who used to run a dairy with a couple of buffaloes. They both gathered the courage to come and actually look, and they found me.
But this is where I think, people should understand, ladies and gentlemen who are following along, or friends who are following along, and or those who know Sanjay Shende. This is the moment where, in spite of a personal tragedy of sorts, a very physical impact to his, being, here's a man who picks himself up. I believe you have rods and opinions, and
Yeah,
you are a
yeah, yeah.
bionic man. You are a bionic man, to
I,
be
I have
honest.
I have two plates and 13 screws in my left femur, and then even there is a plate here with four screws. That was another thing later in life.
Later
2000,
in
there was a
life,
spinal
you're a kind of a
reconstruction.
bionic man,
A little
and
bit.
this a little bit. In fact, if magnets were to come close to you, you'd probably go stick to the magnet. That's how I can kind of imagine you.
Okay.
But jokes apart, Sanjay, folks, this is where one should understand and realize that a man who technically, with the kind of impact that he had, decided, took the courage, came back, again sat with the interviews with two batches as junior, that was me, and we both qualified, and he got again selected as a kitchen executive trainee with another very big chain, which is the ITC, and he and I had our journey beyond that as well. But let's now transition to that change in your career, because you took a very big gamble to move out of India, and I know you went to Ireland, and you again continued with the restaurants. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, I walk in into Dublin into a restaurant. I'm eating food in an Indian restaurant, and I turn around, and strangely enough, the man whom I asked was somebody whom I had worked with back in my days in the Taj. And I just took the name Sanjay Shende, and they said, "You're talking about the same Sanjay Shende? I know that Sanjay Shende." So the name Sanjay Shende was pretty much familiar even in circles in Dublin, Ireland, as a creator of good food and a person who was known for setting up restaurants and what have you. How does that transition happen? You're leaving India and walking out of it.
Well, Rajat, I mean, one thing that I learned was leaving India on leaving a big corporate structure such as Welcome Group, that kind of a setup, moving into a private restaurant job in Ireland, one should think 10 times. I was clueless what was coming up the way. And initially, it was a bit of a rough journey, but then things settled. And with the opening of a restaurant called Papadam, which was a runaway success, like hugely successful
In Dublin. In
in
Dublin.
Dublin. I mean, one of the opening reviews characterized that restaurant as somebody said, the reviewer said that to describe a visit to Papadam as a visit to an Indian restaurant would be to describe a climb to Mount Everest as a hill walk. Some outrageously talented chef has created what has to be the prime contender for the best Indian food anywhere in Europe. Like those were the kind of accolades being bestowed on that restaurant, and it was hugely successful. But then my life has always been, interrupted by uh, fortuitous things. किस्मत ही ऐसी है, कुछ दिन सक्सेस आई, उसके बाद फिर ये spinal reconstructive surgery पंगा happened. Ended up in a hospital and prolonged hospitalization. When that ended, actually, and I was in one of the biggest hospitals in Dublin, where I used to observe the catering as it used to happen in the ward, and I was very fascinated at the accuracy with which the food was delivered. So I said, this is something I need to learn, otherwise my catering knowledge would remain kind of lacking somewhere. So I just applied in the health services, and I was immediately selected as the head chef in a different hospital, which was of a much smaller size but further away from where I lived. I used to live in West Dublin. This was in southeast of Dublin. I used to travel every day over the Dublin mountains driving my car. It was enjoyable but very time consuming. So I applied to be transferred to this hospital, which was closer to my house, the big one, the Tala Hospital. And even though my grade remained the same, but because that hospital was already very well established and a huge one, I wasn't the head chef there, but I was a senior chef there. But during that tenure, I learned all the ins and outs of cook chill, catering, and everything, working all the shifts. But again, after a while, creative chefs cannot be tied down to hospital jobs because it is so routine. even the menu doesn't change. I mean, it's a cyclical menu, same production cycle. After a while, you get sick of it. So I just ventured to open my own uh,
You
operation. And
decided to get into business, and this is the
yes,
point where I want to get in, that you, if I'm not mistaken, I would call you a movie star as far as I'm concerned, because there's a movie called Silver Linings Playbook in which our own Anupam Kher acted, and of
yes,
course
yes.
it had Bradley Cooper in it and it had Jennifer Lawrence in it. And I distinctly remember a scene where Anupam Kher is with Bradley Cooper outside the stadium for a football match, an American football
It was
match.
some tailgating party scene,
It was a tailgating party scene where Bradley Cooper gets into a bit of a
brawl
fisticuff, into
with
a
a brawl.
brawl. But you were in that scene, and you
Yes,
were
yes.
there with Anupam Kher, and you are talking. You are in the presence of all these people, and that movie did receive critical acclaim, and if I'm not mistaken, won an
One
Oscar
Oscar,
as well.
one Oscar for
And
Jennifer.
Mr.
Yes.
Kher was recognized for his role. How did you land a part in a Silver Linings Playbook kind of a movie? How did you engineer
See,
that?
once the business and all was happening, after the business became successful again, roaring success,
Your
like
own personal business where you set up
yes,
restaurants and you're
yes,
operating them.
yes,
Okay.
takeaways and restaurants. But then a bit of a family crisis hit. Like this time, it was personal and very injurious in nature. Like in terms of you know how family separations can be. And at that time,
And
I
I know
was
it didn't go very easily. It hasn't gone very easy for you.
no,
You've
no.
weathered the storm. You've weathered the storm.
Uh, and the only thing that I could do at that stage after the restructuring of the business and giving up my shares as mandated by the courts and so on was to just look elsewhere. So there was an opportunity. A big, exciting restaurant was being planned in Philadelphia by one of your own batchmates, Munish. And
You from Ireland into Philadelphia, United States.
we met in London, and that's where he offered me to come up as a chef there. And again, the cycle of successes and debacles, they keep alternating with regular intervals in my life. I hope now there is nothing further than been there, done that kind of situation. Ho
But
gaya,
Sanjay,
काफी.
take a pause there. That is the true great story. That you yourself said it. There is a cycle of successes, and then you go through a little downturn, but you quickly
Incredible
revive
successes
yourself.
and incredible downturns, like both happening at such regular frequency that it's unbelievable. It just, the wave diagram we used to draw in physics.
Yes, I call you
It's
the
just
boxer. You get a knock on your chin, you get up and you punch a few, and you punch hard, and then you get knocked a
once
little
again.
bit and you come back again. You, with your bowler hat right now, you kind of remind me of a boxing ring manager.
अभी
Who's
हैट उतार दूंगा तो असली लुक आ जाएगी. That is
there
even
you
a
go.
more boxer look.
But come to that point as to Philadelphia and talk about Silver Linings Playbook and how did you land that
So
part?
Philadelphia, one day we were launching the brunch for that restaurant. That restaurant also became a runaway success. I mean, within couple of months of its opening, it got nominated. You might know this name, which is the equivalent of Michelin star in US, called James Beard Award.
James Beard. James Beard.
This was actually in all the magazines. Alan Rickman's best dish of the year, uh, James Beard Award for the best new restaurant got nominated for that and all that. And we were launching the brunch service after the restaurant had settled initially. And one day the hostess came up and said, "There is a man at the door. He insists that he wants to see the owners. He just refuses to go away." So I said,
Hmm.
"Who the hell is this?" We went, actually, Munish went and saw Anupam Kher, of all the people, standing at the door. कह रहा है, "Sir, खाना मिल जाएगा कुछ?" तो
Anupam
he
Kher
said,
said, "Khana mil jayega." Okay. Okay.
ब्रांच कह रहे ये मुझे आने नहीं दे रहे अंदर. तो उसने कहा, "She has been instructed, but she doesn't know who you are, obviously. But please do come in." And Anupam Kher came in, and I was there at the kitchen. The kitchen was a kind of a like the Bukhara kitchen. You can see an interactive kitchen. We even had a kind of a chef's table where so we could. It was a transparent, open plan kitchen. So Anupam Kher suddenly saw me अरे शिंदे साहब, क्या हो रहा है ये फिलाडेल्फिया में? तो हमें खाना ही नहीं मिल रहा आपकी नगरी में. अच्छा, Anupam Kher and I had met for many times in the past during his shoots when I was in Lalgarh and Jaipur, this and that. He used to be, and in those smaller hotels, you give more personalized service to film stars and also. And then in the evenings, they sit and hang out, and you being the HOD, you hang out with them. So a bit of a social relationship builds up there. तो मैंने कहा यार ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है सर, वो आइए आप. वी वर वाइंडिंग अप एक्चुअली दैट टाइम. मैंने कहा आपके लिए खोल देते किचन. एंड व्हाट ब्रिंग्स यू टू आवर यूएस, Philadelphia of all the places? He says there is this movie and all, some Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper are there and all. So from that day, Anupam Kher started visiting the restaurant for his evening dinners because he used to get home food. Restaurant menu was there, but everybody cannot, you cannot eat restaurant food every day. Sometimes you need a khichdi, just dal roti, something simple. So I used to be happy to make it for him. Munish was happy to entertain him. Lagavlin khul jati thi, Lagavlin 17 बैठते थे रातों को. One day Mr. Kher came and said that they are looking for a few Indian faces for a particular scene in which, there is this history to these Eagles matches, Philadelphia Eagles, and it's about a lot of superstition and all. And this Indian troop, which is a diehard follower of the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a particular spot, parking spot, and they believe that if they don't park at that spot, Eagles will lose. So they have a fight with some giant supporters, and then in that brawl, there are some racist comments made, and then Bradley Cooper, being your friend, he comes in your defense, and a bit of fisticuffs and fight, उस टाइप का सीन है कुछ. मैंने कहा चलते यार. Why not? uh, वैसे भी I had experience of TV serials and these food shows, जायके का सफर and all.
Right,
I had
right.
actually acted in a couple of Delhi police ad campaigns as well as in a serial called Leku back in the era of Mahabharat.
Correct.
Previously,
I should have mentioned that you are familiar with television and this
so yeah, and then all the stars started dropping into that restaurant because it was such a popular spot in Philadelphia. Like, uh, knowing the owners and the key people there was a guarantee to entry there. Otherwise, it was jam packed every night. But we used to be happy to entertain Chris Tucker and Bradley
Yeah,
Cooper. And,
and so you featured in that, although it wasn't a very long segment, but it was a
a lot of it gets
fairly, yeah, a
yeah
lot of it gets covered. You have a dialogue
edited.
with,
Yeah,
you have a
yeah.
dialogue as well. You talk to the protagonist, and then the fisticuffs happen. Because when I saw it, I said, "This cannot be it. This is my friend." I mean, I was like, I was taken out of my wits when I said there can't be two Sanjay Shendes in the world.
I
Or
was actually supposed to explain something about a Ganesha idol to Bradley Cooper that time.
correct,
That was
correct,
the scene.
correct.
Anyway,
So you're a celebrity, my friend. Apart from that, you're a movie star, as they say. And but then that happened, and you decided to give it all up, and you decided to get into learning. You're not an Excel trained guy. You're not a quantitative an analysis guy. There was nothing about you that talked, at least till we were working together, related to anything related to analytics or data or what have you.
even
But you
IT
suddenly,
for that matter.
or or information technology, and there you
Or
decided to chuck it all up. What was that all
what
about?
happened was that the legal pressures and the court cases that were brewing up in Ireland, I had to kind of take a break from Philadelphia, head back to Ireland to sort these things out. And whilst I was at it, because I was kind of separated from the family and family home, in my better times, actually, when my business in Ireland itself was flourishing, I actually had the wisdom of investing a bit of my in my own education. So I had actually done a HR undergrad course. It was a BA honors in human resource management from one of the leading B schools in Ireland. And as luck would have it, like I was one of the only three who got a first class honors in that course. So on the strength of that course, because it was a level 8 and I was a first class honors, they were offering a conversion to a more relevant course, and my HR instinct told me that this might be a good time to switch over to a field where the scope is going to be, the employability is going to be more going forward. Now that I'm growing too old to keep starting restaurants and then ending up with messes like this, I probably need more stability in life. So I did this conversion course in computing, and again, initially it was a struggle. Like the modules in the first semester, one of them was a big project on web development, and all the CSS and the language and coding. It has to look elegant and it has to make sense, and you have to link the two. And in that course, there were a few Indian young lads. IT is a young industry in general, so they had traveled from India. I used to think कि इनके पीछे पड़ के थोड़ा बहुत अपना काम निकालूंगा. I used to think that I would be able to piggyback on their knowledge, but they were too busy attending Diwali parties, this and that. And when the project came, I said, I was that close to the submission, and I said, this dependence is not going to work. So again, a manthan moment. One night I just sat and said, I will get it done. And I got it done. Subah ho gayi, and everything worked with my project. We were supposed to kind of develop a website about a movie as you would have it. So I had a lot of pictures and images to
So,
get
ladies
that
and
one.
gentlemen, this is an important thing. Again, look at the transformation of the individual. And that is the story about true grit, of not getting bogged down by circumstances. Today, if I'm not mistaken, you are a certified, qualified data analyst. You support the Irish government in some shape or form
Yeah,
at the European Parliament. What do you do there? What exactly is your role?
yes,
I joke with you.
the IT course which I did from IT Blanchardstown, that was the level 8 course. And as I said that in that web development project, I ended up topping that subject. So I got a good placement after that, and working now for the Department of Planning and Public Expenditure. स्कूल के
I
दोस्तों के
am
साथ.
actually going to laugh on the fact that, so the guy from Ghaziabad who did not know what Ahiko where was, and French used to be rather challenging, and hotel engineering was like, why the heck am I doing it? To being a full fledged data scientist, and what a
रजत
remarkable journey it is.
रजत तुम्हारे सामने तो दिल खोल के रख सकते हैं. सच कहूँ तो अब थक गया हूँ ऐसे. It's had too much, but I hope now the remainder of the life is without any. पता नहीं फिर जो भी आएगा झेलना तो है ही यार. Whatever
Yes.
comes your way, you have no choice.
You have to roll with the punches.
That's
You have
it.
to roll with the punches.
Yes.
Any regrets of the last 50 some years on planet Earth and what you have done? Or anything that you want to really say, I feel really good about?
Regret is that one shouldn't get a very good start either, in their field, because that can actually work against you to a certain
Oh,
extent.
doesn't toughen you up, is what you're saying. But what is the flip side of it? What would you like to say have been the highs that you feel really positive about, and what would you like the others coming after us to know?
Well, I mean, the highs is that for one thing, something that is quite natural, not that I've ever had to work towards it, is that my physical stature and everything makes me very easily recognizable. So, or maybe it is something about my persona जिससे मैं एक बार मिल लेता हूँ, वो तो मुझे याद रखते हैं. From my side, then I have to make the effort, having been in the hospitality industry, कि offend ना हो जाए कि मैं पहचान नहीं पा रहा हूँ, तो I have to work triply hard to remember everybody that I am meeting as I go along, and be able to be on their first name terms and know a bit about them at every time. So I have to work extra hard on these techniques of remembering the nuances and little details about everybody. But again, blessed with a good memory, touch wood.
As we end today's conversation with you, is there a song that motivates you, or is there a book that motivates you? And what would that song or that book be, or both for you?
Song, I want to break free.
Sanjay, what a pleasure talking to you. And as I call you, Shendu Chacha, unbelievable journey, my friend. What a path you've charted out, and wishing you many more successes. Any parting thoughts, Sanjay, before we say bye?
Well, I mean, the best of luck to everybody that I know. Everybody has contributed in some way. Uh, Even though the cliche is that a man who is friend to everybody is an enemy to oneself, but I don't think so. I think I've been extremely blessed in that way, except where it actually mattered. The family went a bit haywire, but that was actually a call, which was a conscious call, because there is no point in deceiving yourself. When something is not working out, you have to make a clean break and keep it nice.
So, Sanjay, maybe I can ask you an honest question. You've known me for 33 years, 34 years now. Is there anything that you'd like me to know about myself from your vantage point?
Well, I mean, you are one of the sharpest brain and very quick thinking, and one of the most oratory wise blessed with a lot of oratory, well traveled, uh, successful person, with whom I wish that my relationship should last till the end of my life, and I wish you the very best. I know you have already excelled beyond anybody's imagination from our batch. So, I mean, that magic potion that you have, which gives you that special power, more power to you, Rajat.
You've been very kind, Sanjay. You've taken care of me and kept me mentally happy, satisfied, emotionally safe, including when I visited your little pad, where our training center used to be. It used to be a homely feeling coming to be with you. I know our relationship will stand the test of time, and it'll be around for the next 40 years to come, maybe 50. And with that, pleasure talking to you this evening. Wishing you all
Likewise,
the best.
likewise,
We'll see
Rajat.
you soon in Ireland. Hopefully, come to Dublin and to Galway and then
Indeed,
spend time with you. But
indeed,
good luck,
very
my
welcome.
friend. Have a wonderful, wonderful
And
day ahead.
and also from my side, really nice to know your success has rubbed off on your next generation. Your son is doing extremely well, and he probably has a start. कहते हैं ना बच्चे बाप से बढ़ के. So all the best to your kids also from my side.
Thank you, brother.
Really
Thank
wish
you
them
very
well.
much. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, well wishers, wishing you all a wonderful night or a wonderful morning or a great afternoon or a great evening, depending on where you are. We were in conversation with Sanjay Shende, Shendu Chacha as I call him, a very, very genuine true grit story, a story of where he has revived himself like a fighter, like a boxer, and has reconstructed himself at every stage to where he is today. I'd like to wish him all the best and sign off. Uh,
तूने वो खिलौना देखा है जो नीचे उसका सेंटर ऑफ ग्रेविटी हाई होता है, यू पंच इट, इट फॉल्स अगेन स्टैंड्स अप.
And that is your story. That's your story. A true grit story. Thank you, Sanjay. Have a wonderful night. Bye bye, everyone. Catch you later for another show.